Recently, I've realized that my Lone Peak 5s are pretty much the end of their lifespan. So I started looking at my other options to see if there was something better out there for my next pair of shoes, or if I should just go with the next generation of Lone Peaks. I pretty much enjoyed everything about the Lone Peaks, with the exception of the stack height. In certain scenarios, like doing descents, I would notice that I could feel that height that I was off the ground and felt kind of disconnected from it. Most likely because I also wear minimalist footwear at times, so I get used to having that really low center of gravity on the shoe. Is it all in my head? Does it really make a difference? I don't know, but I figured I might as well try it. So I looked around, and when you're looking for a wide toe box, zero drop, but still some actual foam in between, not just rubber, you start to limit yourself pretty quickly. These are essentially your only options. I do believe that the Joe Nimble shoes that I reviewed a couple of years ago would technically qualify, but I did not like them. They had either a narrow midfoot or arch support. There was some kind of confusion on which one it really was, but either way, it wasn't good for me, so they're out. So with those qualifications, this is what I'm left with. First off, we have the Altra Superior 6s. I know that the 7s are out, but these were on 50% off sale, so that's why they're here. Really not a whole lot of hype about them online. I think because the Lone Peaks are like the centerpiece of that brand, these being pretty close but just a little lower. You know, I went to a big shoe store locally and they said they hadn't even carried them in a year or so because no one really cared. Everyone came in for the Lone Peak and these collected dust. The other two are kind of opposite, not big brands, but big hype. The Topo Runventure 4s are beloved online. You can find plenty of reviews where people are raving about them, mostly people who used to wear Ultras, but felt that over the years the toe boxes were getting more narrow and felt that the Topos were the solution. So obviously great, that's why I brought them in. And then lastly are these Inov8s with some really ridiculously long name. May not be a fan of the naming convention, but you can't deny the hype behind them online. Some guy said that they were the perfect shoe in his eyes and that he would be happy if he could never wear any other shoe ever again. But then there's been a couple people who I found who said that even though they are labeled as being the widest that Inov8 offers and considered a wide toe box, that they actually weren't. So we're gonna figure it all out today. I'm basically gonna make the video that I wish already existed. Instead of hearing people's random opinions about what's comfortable or what's wide or what's this or what's that, we're gonna just get down to it. I'm going to lay these on top of each other. You can see how they vary from one model to another. I'm also going to bring in the Lone Peak insoles as well as kind of a base to measure from. Probably gonna bring in my Zero Prio insoles as well, just out of curiosity. And also I have an old pair of insoles from some Nikes that were like BMX and skate shoes, but I think is a pretty good representation of a mainstream standard insole size. So I just figured it'd be interesting to see how they all match up. All right, we're gonna start out with the Lone Peak 5 insoles because they're a little bit more common. You may have worn them before, and they're generally agreed upon as being comfortable and having a wide toe box. So we're gonna throw the Superior 5 insoles in there, kind of shuffle them up here, make sure they're as close as they can be. And what I'm seeing is a little bit more space on the side here for the Lone Peaks. Not even sure the camera angle can pick it up, but that also tells you how close it is. So a little bit more space on the Lone Peaks, and then maybe once again a little more space on the Lone Peaks as well. We'll bring over the Topos and see what they're doing compared to the Superiors. All right, so we've got the Topos on top here. Not seeing a whole lot of the Ultra insole coming around. So maybe we need to flip them and see. Yeah, that was the right move. We can see that the Topos have a little bit more material here in the midfoot, a little bit kind of all around. And then we'll flip them over to see how things are going. Yeah, so it looks like there's a little more material sticking out from the Superiors on the outside of the foot, but then more here. So it's definitely a different shape, But they're once again pretty close. I would definitely give the nod to these though as having more space for your foot. And then lastly, I have the Inov8s, and they are definitely different. So we'll just lay them on top of the Topo here. And wow, right away, you can see this is a huge difference. Now I want to try to be as fair as I can there. And like I said, I'll measure them here in a minute. So if this isn't good for you, you can jump ahead and just see the numbers. So you can see just from them laying there, definitely more narrow here by the arch, more narrow in the heel, and more narrow in the toe box. And that was something that I noticed when I put those on. I just tried them on very quickly, and they definitely did not feel like a wide toe box in the sense of what we are probably used to. Wider than average shoes, sure, but you can see, I mean, that's a lot less space in there for it to be the same size shoe. Just to be fair, we'll compare it also to the Superiors, and you know, wow, once again, a lot of space missing there, a lot smaller in the toe box on this side. And because I said I would do it earlier, I'm gonna toss in real quick my Zero insoles and the more mainstream Nike insoles just to see how these things stack up. And what I was surprised to see was that these Nikes, which are 10.5, but these are very standard, narrow, uncomfortable shoes. I only kept them around for biking purposes. And when you put the supposed wide toe box Inov8s on top of these traditional narrow Nikes, you can see that, you know, it's more narrow in the heel, but when you get to the toe box area, I mean, yeah, you do have more room up here by some, but that's not enough in my opinion, especially because it has to do with the shape. So these kick out more here, these kick out more here. It's almost a draw when you look at it, really. I mean, these do still, the Inov8s do still feel wider than Nikes, but you can see it's really not by a ton, which really blew me away. So we've got these here, and then in comparison to the Zeros, I mean, there's not a whole lot of question about that. There's a big, big difference. And then, you know, the Zeros compared to the Ultras, some difference, not as much. You get the idea. And just for fun, we'll do the Topos because those were, to me, considered the widest, and put the Nike insoles on top, and there you go. Definitely not a foot shape right there. All right, so next I'm going to do the actual measurements. So the thing that made the most sense to me was to line all these up on my feet and measure from the ball of my foot across, as it's just a standard way to measure my foot, and I think it's about the widest area.
After measuring all of the insoles across the ball of the foot area, it turns out that the Zero Prios and Ultra Lone Peak 5s were the same at 102 millimeters. The Ultra Superior 5s and the Topo Runventure 4s were the same at 100 millimeters. And the Inov8s and the Nike BMX shoes were the same at 97 millimeters.
All right, so last up is the flexibility test. I'm gonna do my best to put the same amount of pressure on all of them. First up, we have my Lone Peaks. I know they're old, so it's not fair, but just here you go. I know that wasn't exactly scientific, but I'm just tossing it in there just in case it helps somebody with their decision.
All right, it's been a few days. I've gotten to try on the shoes and wear them around and get some first impressions. And here's what I'm thinking. First off, with the Superiors, they had to go. Unfortunately, there just wasn't quite enough space in that shoe for my foot. If you want to use the rock guard, it was particularly tight. Even without it, unless I wore my absolute thinnest socks possible, it felt really tight still all around. And for me, for the width of my feet, my right foot was just a tiny bit too wide in the front, regardless of what sock or lack of sock combo I used. So it just made sense to send them back. Next up, we have the Topos. They were wider in the front, but the arch support seemed to go a little bit further back on my foot than where it needed to be. I don't know if that's like a situation where I could size up to a 10.5 and have it make sense, but as it was with those, it's not going to work for me. Also, it felt like there was a little something on the outside edge, kind of like a stability shoe has, like the guide rail sort of system. I don't know if that's supposed to be the case with these or not. I didn't notice that they were stability shoes, but regardless, that's what I seem to feel in them. So just giving you my thoughts on that. Like I said, unfortunately, they're probably headed back just because of that arch support issue. And the Inov8s were definitely the most extreme when it came to weird fitting issues. It wasn't the front of the shoe that was the big problem, even though you would expect it to be from the measurements, but it was the back of it. Beyond the arch area, the heel area was so much more narrow than the other shoes. It felt like the side of my foot was spilling out over the shoe. Think almost like a beer gut on an older guy just blew over. That's how my foot felt, to the point where I went and measured the insoles to see the width difference, and it was a pretty massive difference, which I'll put on the screen. So those had to go right away, which brings me to the final conclusion that it looks like all of the shoes are going back. I'll probably just get some Lone Peak 6s, since they're pretty close to the 5s that I'm used to, and just call it a day. If you know of any shoes that fit the bill that I was talking about that I didn't review or mention, then please let me know so I can give them a shot. But for now, it's just back to the old standards. Thanks for watching, and hopefully it helps somebody out there. Bye.